Dr. Randy, we have some questions that we weren't able to get to on the program today. So we thought we'd do this and then post them on Facebook. So JB says, I have a son who's going to be 18 next month, and he's starting to make bad choices, smoking, drinking. And he says, it's because I try to control all of his actions. What should I do when he's going to be out on his own soon, and I'm scared he's going to end up in jail or worse?
You know, as a parent, one of the worries we have is our children are going to make decisions that hurt them and hurt the family and have long-term consequences. But the blame game where he's saying it's your fault, you're causing me to do this, and if that's true, and in terms of you being too controlling parent, you need to back off and say, look, you're 18 years old. The decisions you make, you're living with now. You're 18. And I would, instead of making statements, because you've been teaching him right from wrong, I would ask more open-ended questions. If you continue on this course, what difference is that going to make toward the career you want to go into, how you want to live your life? Because you're 18 now, it goes on your record. But then as a parent, please don't fund their misbehavior. Don't give them the car, the gas, the money if they're living in a way that's contrary to the values of your home. And you do it because that's actively showing respect to your kids.
Kathy says, I'm the queen of enabling. I've been one all my 60 years. As she says, she's the oldest child of an alcoholic father. She says now her 37-year-old son, his life has been destroyed. She says it's because of her need to save him. She says, I never let him face a consequence, but rushed in before he fell. Now he's lost his wife, his house, his children, his job, his license, everything. She says, I have a new relationship with the Lord, just a 2-year-old relationship with God, and she's starting to see some of the mistakes that she made, and she says, what do I do now?
You know, we're talking regret here, and when we live in a world of regret, we're going to constantly blame ourselves. And she's already put him in the category of failure and destroyed and ruined. And if you do that with even a 37-year-old, you're missing the boat. I would sit down with my 37-year-old and say, son, I made a lot of mistakes as a parent, but I know that you're capable of living a life that'll honor Christ. I know that if you give your life to Christ, it can make a difference like it's made a difference in my life. But one of the things I've had to do is to make a decision. I'm no longer going to enable you. So whatever you're doing that's enabling him, paying the bills, covering for him, protecting him, stop it. It stops today. And whatever decisions you make, you're going to have to live with those decisions and those consequences. I'll pray for you. I'm here, but I'm not going to continue to enable. And then be consistent and don't allow guilt to drive you.
Dr. Randy, Tina is divorced, and she says that her children are being exposed to some things at her ex-husband's house that are really, really bad for them. And she says he's leading a very secular lifestyle. He lives with his girlfriend, and she has 2 children. She says that her kids, though, are now being exposed to terrible things in the house, including lewd behavior, R-rated movies, violent video games, and her kids are only 10, 8, and 6 years old. And she says, how do I tell them this is wrong without sounding like I'm bad-mouthing their dad?
Well, you probably can't. And that's why it's important not to get caught in the middle. You can't be responsible for what goes on in another person's home, in the dad's home in this case. Obviously, if you have some sort of a decent relationship with your ex-spouse, to sit down together and say, hey, can we have some agreement on some standards, how we're going to raise our children in your home or my home. We may have to agree to disagree at some level, but whatever we do, our kids are going to be confused if we can't come up with some basic agreement. Now, if you don't have that, then what you have to do in your home is don't get caught in the middle of talking about dad and dad this, and because that can get to be a problem. You get caught in the middle of these blended families. But set some standards in your home where your children see why we don't watch R-rated movies in our home, why we don't speak this way, why we don't behave this way, but put it in the context of our home, not a dad's home. That's being intentional. It's also showing active respect.
Is this a case of you can control what you can control, but you can't control somebody else? So the environment that you have some control over, make it the best environment you can.
Absolutely, and that's the key. I mean, obviously, if you guys had been on the same page, you probably wouldn't have divorced in the first place. And so the divorce is often a symptom of the fact that you're not in agreement. So the fact that you're divorced, put the focus on one thing, not your ex-husband and all the things you don't like about him. Keep the focus on your child and ask, what one thing can I do as a parent through my ex-spouse that we can try to get on the same page for the benefit of the child?
Okay, I have one more for you, Dr. Randy. It's Joe, and this also has to do with adult kids. Joe says that when our adult kids live in our home and have no respect for us as parents, what do we do? He says, no matter what we say or do, they continue to use us as a doormat. No one follows our house rules and no one helps us out. Really struggling with having those adult kids at home, and the kids are disrespecting Joe and his family, and it's hurting his marriage. So what does he do?
Can I say it in a really brief answer?
Yes.
Throw them out in love, Christian love, of course. Hey, listen, our home's be a place of respect. This is the way we run our home, and you're welcome to be here during this stage. But if you can't abide by our rules that are reasonable and show respect to us, then you're welcome to leave. It's your decision. Keep the ball in their court and hold them accountable.
All right, Dr. Randy, thanks so much. After the program, looking forward to doing these in the future and having a little more opportunity for exposure of you and the teaching here of intentional living and using social media to further that.
Thank you. If you decide today to take a small